Geno Smith is having a career resurgence, one unlike we've ever seen before. Everyone, including me, had written off the Seahawks coming into this season after they traded away Russell Wilson, and now it looks like they completely fooled the Broncos and are on their way to rebuilding something special. How did Geno go from second round bust to a legitimate MVP candidate? Like and subscribe, and let's get into it. Before we can talk about where Geno is, we have to understand where he came from. Coming out of West Virginia, where he had set the single game, single season, and career touchdown records, he was viewed as a definite high draft pick. However, there were doubters who felt the offense he ran in college wouldn't translate to the NFL. Throwing for 98 touchdowns to just 21 interceptions through essentially 3 seasons is nothing to scoff at, though. Looking back at it now, the 2013 draft was probably the worst quarterback draft of all time. E.J. Manuel out of Florida State was the only quarterback drafted in the first round, and Geno was still in the green room waiting on day 2 before he was drafted 39th overall by the New York Jets. There were rumors they might trade into the first to get him, but they waited and were rewarded for their patience. He was named the starter from day 1, and as a rookie he led the team to an 8-8 record. This was a slight step up from 6-10 the year prior. However, the team seemed to win in spite of Geno rather than because of him. He threw for just 12 touchdowns and a whopping 21 interceptions in 16 games. He threw as many interceptions in one season of the NFL as he did in his entire college career. It was only downhill from there for the rest of his time with the Jets. He started 13 games in his second season, ending up with a record of 3-10 in those contests. Ironically, his yards per game, completion percentage, and touchdowns all increased while his interceptions decreased. But the team wasn't able to pull together wins. The Jets placed him on the bench, went to their backup Michael Vick for the remainder of the season, and then moved on to Ryan Fitzpatrick the following year. Geno remained on the roster for 2 more seasons, only starting 1 more game before signing with the Giants as the backup to Eli Manning. He would get spot time in 2 games with 1 start that year. He threw for 1 touchdown and 0 interceptions, but had a very low 58% completion percentage. Next stop was the Chargers to back up Phillip Rivers. He appeared in 5 games, only completing 1 pass for 8 yards. Finally, it was on to Seattle, and he's the star we know today, right? Absolutely not. He spent 2 years as the backup to Russell Wilson, appearing in 1 game in 2020 and then starting 3 games at the end of 2021. He went 1-2 in those games, but completed 68% of the passes while throwing 5 touchdowns to 1 interception. Exactly what you'd hope for out of your backup quarterback. I don't think many people paid much attention to it at this time, but Geno was showing the beginning of what he could be under Pete Carroll and with the talent he had at the skill positions. Up to this point, Smith had a career completion percentage of 57%. He jumped up to 68% for his 3 games as a starter in Seattle. His touchdown percentage for his career to that point was 3.2, and in these 3 games, he was all the way up to 5.3%. That means he went from throwing 3 touchdowns per 100 throws up to 5. Pretty solid jumps in some key stats, but with an admittedly small sample size. Let's move forward to this offseason and preseason. The Seahawks traded away Russell Wilson for Drew Lock, Noah Fant, Shelby Harris, 2 firsts, 2 seconds, and a 5th. It immediately became a foregone conclusion that Pete Carroll saw something in Drew Lock and he'd be the starter immediately while they began the painful rebuild. Immediately in training camp, though, every report was that Geno Smith was better in every way. On August 27th, following their last preseason game, Geno was named the Week 1 starter. People, myself included, laughed and joked about this poverty franchise and tanking for a number 1 overall pick. I would like to take this moment to apologize to Seahawks fans everywhere and let you know I was wrong. There could not have been a better script written for how the season started. Denver and their new quarterback come to town and get beat by his backup. Geno completed an insane 82% of his passes for 195 yards and 2 touchdowns while throwing 0 interceptions. He mentioned in the press conference that taking care of the ball was his number 1 priority this year, and he certainly did that. So how have things gone since then? The Seahawks are number 1 in the NFC West, sitting at 6-3 and on a 4-game win streak. Geno has continued his hot streak, completing 73% of his passes on the season. He's thrown for 15 touchdowns against just 4 interceptions and is averaging nearly 245 yards per game. For context, prior to arriving in Seattle, he averaged 176 yards per game, and let me remind you, a career completion percentage of 57%. Insane growth, and I'm going to take a quick stab at explaining why I think it happened. First of all, I think Geno has always been talented. You don't have that success in college, get drafted that high, and now play the way you are if you're not. So that helps. But the coaching and the weapons have to be a large part of why he has been so successful here. First, the coaching. The plays that are being called clearly work with his skill set. The most glaring change I see in the plays called for Geno in Seattle versus his previous stops is his depth per target. Per StatsMuse, his career average air yards was 6.8 prior to landing in Seattle. This season, it's up to 7.8. He clearly has success looking downfield, and that's where his wide receivers are most skilled. They also are putting him in play-action passing situations. 24% of his pass attempts are play-action. He has the third most play action attempts in the league, and it accounts for nearly 30% of his passing yards. Seattle has a strong run game with Kenneth Walker, and Geno is benefiting. So let's get to the other talented guys catching the ball. It's pretty simple, really. DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett are the two most talented receivers that Geno has ever had on his team. The Seahawks are second to last in the league in drops, so if the ball is catchable, it's caught. That helps significantly with completion percentage, as well as bringing down interceptions. How many times have we seen a ball skip off a receiver's hands and into the safeties? That's not happening in Seattle. DK is an expert contested catch guy, and Lockett is not just a deep threat, but beats man coverage on crossing routes on the regular. Adding in a consistent run game and at least a middle-of-the-pack pass-protecting offensive line, Geno is in the best situation of his career, and the Seahawks have picks on top of picks to get even more talent to surround him as they build for the future. Can Geno win MVP? Will the Seahawks make a playoff run? Let me know what you think down in the comments. Thanks for watching, like and subscribe, and I'll see y'all next time.